all what the human mind does is pretend all the time to know what's going on. And spirituality and philosophy are the main culprits of this. They create a sort of scaffolding where you box reality into something. And then you have the feeling that you understand what is going on. And then this feeling of understanding gives you a sense of great comfort. And from there, you want to pretend that your understanding is deeply, deeply known in a way that makes you special. A lot of what spirituality is really about is to notice how you're not that special and to realize that all the ego is really doing is pretending to know things it can't know. This experience is extremely uncomfortable, and it's where a lot of teachers or self-help gurus kind of stop, because it is much more productive for gaining an audience to tell an audience what the audience thinks it wants to hear. To say that reality is made out of love, or everything is infinite consciousness, or you are infinite awareness, or the ideas of philosophy, be it determinism or free will, and then to just validate them. Or back in the day for me, it was the atheist community. I just loved people arguing against Christians, as I used to be Christian and I fell out of it. So seeing people arguing against Christians was very satisfying. And then you kind of build this very deep web of internal knowledge where you feel like you know this is true because you've spent so much time circle jerking yourself off to what you think you know. The identity then is so deeply ingrained that looking at yourself honestly and noticing that it's all BS is very painful. And this goes deep because the ego doesn't just imagine itself to be right all the time, but it imagines itself to be the center of the universe, that the entire world revolves around it. Like we have as a subjective being, right? As like being a person in a human body, we have the sense that the world revolves around us. And in some sense, it's true, right? Like objectively, this is what the mind does. It creates the idea that we are separate from reality and need to survive. And as a biological organism, we then therefore need to fight for our survival, meaning that we are more important and reality is dangerous. So what we then do is we create models of reality in order to protect ourselves from our own death. The thing is that we have been divorced from the actual survival needs in the wild. The death that we are now scared of is social death. We're scared of being judged socially. We are scared of not being as maybe awake or aware as other people. We are maybe scared of being judged as unsuccessful, or we are being judged for having not enough friends, or not enough girls, or not enough relationships, or not enough wisdom, or not enough money, or not enough whatever, right? Like you could go on and on and on. But it gets especially difficult on this existential, spiritual, philosophical layer, because then you hit the epistemology of a person. Epistemology is like what you think you know, like you're certain you know. It's not even like you think you know it, it's just the bedrock of your mind. And here you find things like morality, like what is good and bad, beliefs in like a deity or God, or like your religion. These are such embedded structures in your egoic conditioning that if somebody were to just pluck out whatever framework you have built around your life, it would be very destabilizing. So a difficult part of teaching these ego dynamics and this, let's say, a bit mystical logic to people is that it can be very destabilizing when you are actually not willing to look at yourself honestly. And this both relates to how you process your emotions, to how you process your beliefs. They're often related. Often the beliefs become to manage the emotions. And we like to think we are these like super rational, logical beings, when in actuality, all we do is try to manage our emotions and we try to manage our survival. How deep this pretending goes becomes very clear when you go into somebody who's very ideologically captured. You can see it now politically all over the world. People getting, fallen into their ideology. And of course, you have MAGA as the classic example, but you could also use communism, or you could use any other political doctrine that kind of enforces a sort of group identity, and then everything has to revolve around this group identity. And I personally just find it very sad how spiritual communities are mostly like this. Spiritual communities seem to me to be one of the most toxic ones. And this is just kind of by the nature of the thing, because everybody wants to appear like they know what's going on. And there's where this pretending starts, because you bring this idea to people that there's something to realize and something to be conscious of and integrate. And then you talk about your own integration socially. And now you automatically build a hierarchy, especially in topics like spirituality, where there's like this idea that you have to dissolve your ego, or you have to be more compassionate than other people, or you can realize the nature of reality. Now there's this constant infighting about who has the right epistemology, who has the right form of God consciousness or whatever. And it's all a silly game of pretending that the ego plays. And sooner or later, people hit the rock bottom of their own spiritual ego, and then they are in for a rude awakening, a very scary realization that no matter which framework you pick, you will always remain to be a human. The most profound spiritual realization is that of your own humanness. And all attempts to see how you can transcend your own humanity will be seen as vanity, because you will never not be human. Whatever you are is human. It is not something you can escape. Now, of course, I also often talk about these ideas of like, one consciousness, or non-duality, or being eternal as some spirit. And I find that the contradiction that you kind of crush into when you use language to describe these things always difficult, because how do you communicate something that is true and false at the same time to an audience that wants to understand things logically? Which is, I think, why the atheist communities that I considered myself a part of were so extremely satisfying, because the logic makes right and wrong very obvious. It's very obvious when somebody isn't thinking clearly, at least from the perspective of the logical mind. When you are logical yourself and you care about your own logical principles over some sort of feeling for truth, and then you see philosophical arguments, and when somebody is dishonest in an argument and you're like logically minded, then it's very obvious, and you can easily feel superior than this person. And you then kind of know you have the high ground. And this then often is true. You probably have some intellectual high ground in this moment. But what you then likely miss is how much you're dismissing that is also true. And this is a sort of intellectual enlightenment that you can reach, where you can see things as true and false at the same time, because you're not attached to language anymore. You understand that whatever the mind does is always in some form pretending, because you cannot communicate reality with words as some sort of ultimate truth. It all only exists in the context of our human civilization, in our human relationships. When you take reality for what it really is in all its immensity, then think about how silly philosophical arguments would look like from the perspective of a spider, like just an insect. Like the insect life has nothing to do with human philosophy, yet humans think that they've reached some ultimate truth of the nature of reality once they've realized non-duality or determinism or absurdism or whatever kind of mental framework you take. But at the end, all of these mental frameworks are just a scaffolding and a protection mechanism for the mind. Now, the question you might ask is, if it's all just a protection mechanism, what's the point of seeing through it? What's the point of elevating your sense of awareness or increasing your consciousness or becoming aware of your ego? And I would say that all of it boils down to suffering. All of it boils down to how happy and satisfied are you with your life. Because the human pretends that it could be something else. It pretends that what is right now could be in another way. And there you have regrets, you have things you wish you had done otherwise in the past. That's just another word for regret, another way to say regrets. There's maybe some fantasy about being in some other dimension or some other country or some, like, there's always some way to look at your current form of existence to be like, this is not good enough, I want something else. And some people think they'll find this something else in a partner. Some people think they find it in a successful business. Some people think they find this in the existential truth of reality, which is what my case was. And in a paradoxical way, you can find a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction in these things, as long as you kill the part that is seeking for fulfillment in some ultimate way. As if you could find one philosophy or one religion or one framework and then just hold reality static into this position and then say, this is what reality is, I figured it all out. But you won't escape ever the nature of transformation and you being implicit in that transformation. As long as you resist that everything passes and that no one has the singular truth, you'll always keep running and searching for something else. And you'll always keep avoiding all the ways you're lying to yourself, all the ways you pretend to be somebody that you aren't actually. Pretending in a societal context where you want to keep up an image for other people, or pretending for yourself to have figured out everything, or know some ultimate nature of thing. Because there is like a nature to things, and there is legit truth, and it's not that it is all just arbitrary garbage. Because if this was the case, I wouldn't be able to teach anybody. I wouldn't be helping other people. And for me, this is where I found fulfillment in all of this work, is that it's actually causing changes in people's lives when they understand themselves and to understand the architecture of their mind and understand how reality functions. The joy for me is in having an impact to use philosophy and spirituality and existentialism to improve the mental health of people. And this is where I find the satisfaction in. And I think a lot of people need to be even honest with themselves that all of their philosophy and spiritual seeking is really about their own search for happiness. That the search for the ultimate truth or the true nature of reality is just kind of a desperate attempt in trying to make yourself more important than you actually are. And it cuts both ways, because you might want to be more important than you actually are and figure out some grand theory or some grand truth and then be fulfilled in that, either personally or to signal socially. Or it's the opposite, and you dismiss how important you actually are. You dismiss how much your life means to you. You dismiss how much you are actually feeling every single day. And you kind of want to press this down and then use some special mechanism to avoid that. So it always cuts both ways with these things. So there's always a way to figure out how much the mind is bullshitting itself. And for me, the entire journey towards like the nature of reality was at the end really about my own mind. Like it can't be otherwise. There's not a way that you can interface with some external reality without stopping to be human. Like whatever is external reality exists within the human context. But again, I don't think a spider sees the world even remotely like we do. And to pretend otherwise is where the pretending already starts. And I would say that true spirituality, true self-understanding, true philosophy always should lead you to a place that is more honest with yourself, more in direct contact with reality, which translated is just contact with yourself, contact with how you function, how you think, and what you want in life, and what you don't want in life, and what actions you can take to change this, and what emotions you need to process, and what are all the subtle ways in which you are pretending to be something that you're not. And the beautiful thing in this is that once you stop pretending to be something that you're not, you're actually feeling a lot better. And we underestimate how much this pretending hurts us, how much it pushes us down and makes us it makes us socially anxious, it makes us awkward towards our own goals, always trying to predict the next outcome, controlling other people, always having to hold it together as if you ever could hold it together. But at the end, there's a flow that guides you, and it requires a bit of faith in yourself and in your surroundings. And as difficult as it may sound in society to want to change, but it always starts with oneself. It always starts with recognizing all the ways in which you kind of pretend to be something you're not. And this is a lot less sexy than saying that everything is perfect just how it is, and we're all just this giant conscious experience that wants to understand itself, and that ultimately the nature of reality is love. And as true as these things might be, they are often a distraction to what we are actually trying to avoid. And if you don't want to avoid things anymore, and you're interested in really digging deep into the nature of yourself, then you should check out my Ego Architecture Audit in the link in the description. I find that there's like a certain type of person that for whatever reason figures itself out because it is more interested in the truth than about comfort. And therefore, it keeps looking and keeps wondering, where am I wrong? Where am I deluding myself? Where am I trying to trick myself? And these are the type of people who usually end up in a spiritually very grounded place because they strip away all of the illusion. The only problem is that throughout this process of doubting yourself and trying to figure yourself out, you might completely lose all ground from under your feet. And then here again, it cuts both ways. You might be doubting things you completely know already, and you're just pretending to not know already. So it's not just that we pretend to know what's going on, we also pretend to not know what's going on. And this is also extremely effective, to feign ignorance and not act as if you don't really want what you really want, to act as if you don't need to do what you really need to do. And it's very easy to do this. It's actually the most easy thing to look away. Ignorance is bliss in the short term. It makes you put your attention to a place where you don't have to investigate the truth. And you can just be in comfort for a while. But it's just short term. And the rippling effects of doing this decision to look away from what is true for you just compounds into like a worse and worse life until at some point you're like 50, 60 years old and you wonder, what have I done with my life? Like, was this really it? And I think it's very sad. And it's not because there's some overall objective meaning or purpose, but there was likely or is likely a purpose for you here. Something that your kind of intuition or soul or whatever you want to call it desires, and something that maybe society or your parents or friends or family or yourself have indoctrinated away or pretended for it to not be in this way. And when you truly know something, like when truth strikes, then all pretension, all doubt is just stripped away. And there's no narrative anymore. There's no logic that can contain it. There's no logic that can justify it. There's no emotion that can sway you. It is just seen for what it is. And all doubt is delusion. All doubt becomes pretending. And then you just know this is the direction I need to take. Now, to distinguish this from delusion is something that is not easy when you're in this doubt spiral. Because from the perspective of the doubt spiral, everything looks like an illusion. Because everything kind of is like an illusion. Like everything is pretended to matter from the human mind. So then you might ask, okay, so how do I then distinguish what is authentic to what is not authentic? How do I know what I really want or what I'm just pretending to want? How do I know what is really the nature of reality and what is just a projection of my mind? And yeah, all of these questions, I wish I could answer them for you in one video, but they are very individual. They are very personalized. And I can always talk to like specific ideas, but for each person, there are of course important differences. But as an overall theme, I would appeal to the idea that when you know something, there's just no room for doubt. And as long as you have room for doubt, you don't know it. And as long as you have to tell yourself to not doubt, like you have to actively have to tell yourself, okay, don't doubt this, you know this already. Well, there's doubt there, right? And then the real trick is to be okay with that. To not pretend to pretend to be okay with that, or not pretend to not be okay with that, but to just see it for what it is, in all of its imperfection, without trying to fix it. This desire to fix yourself is just the most intrinsic, like societal delusion that we're trying to like infect other people with. Always like this hustle culture, or this idea that, yeah, you must just achieve something to be worth something, which, yes, the pretension in a societal scale to act as if, yeah, something that we do makes us special or different than other people. And it's like, yeah, everybody has something special, but that's just what it means to be human, right? It's just an odd experience to be a human. And the real groundedness of somebody who is deeply realized, I think, can be seen if you can look at a random person at the street and see him exactly like yourself. It doesn't matter what social class he's in. It doesn't matter if he's rich. It doesn't matter if he's homeless. Like, you look in another person's eyes and all you see is another human person. I think this is one of the closest hallmarks you can have towards deep spiritual realization.